I will never forget the sound before I saw them, the soft click of a door that should have been locked. Daniel, my husband, was inside the guest casita with Savannah, my son's fiancée. It wasn't a stolen kiss. It was practiced intimacy, the kind that erases years in a single breath. The tray in my hands rattled. Coffee bled into the saucers. I stepped back, ready to pretend I'd seen nothing, when I caught a reflection in the hallway glass. Lucas, my boy, white as gypsum. "Mom," he whispered, voice splintering. "It's been months, and there's something worse you don't know." The oaks outside the sagebrush lodge didn't move, but the world tilted anyway. 43 years of marriage, 8 rooms we built with our hands, and a secret big enough to sell all of it overnight. How much worse, I asked. He swallowed. Bad enough that we have to start now. Before we continue, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know where you are watching from. I steadied the tray on the console table and wiped the coffee with a dishcloth that still smelled faintly of bleach and lavender. Lucas took the cloth from me and folded it once, twice, as if giving my hands something to do would keep my mind from imploding. Behind the casita door, soft laughter thinned into a hush. I did not look back. "Walk," Lucas said. We moved past the adobe arch and into the spine of the main house. Our hall had a habit of echoing things you didn't want to hear. Today, it only held our breath. We cut through the courtyard where the ristras hung like red punctuation and slipped into the little office behind reception, the place where I paid bills, sent booking confirmations, and wrote thank you notes with the pen Daniel gave me on our 20th anniversary. Lucas shut the door. The latch clicked like a metronome set too fast. "Sit," he said unevenly, opening the lower file drawer that I always called a junkyard. He didn't dig there. He reached under the drawer fingers, finding a taped envelope I didn't know existed. He peeled it free and laid it between us. My name was written on it in my own handwriting. It wasn't mine. "You said months," I murmured, surprised by how calm I sounded. "So you knew." Lucas winced. He is 30, but the look he gave me belonged to the boy who used to stand in the kitchen asking if the thunder would split the house. "I thought it was a phase," he said. I wanted to be wrong. Then I checked Savannah's phone one night. She left it on the counter open to messages. I wouldn't have if he cut himself off. "I can live with being a bad fiancé," he said flatly. "I can't live with letting you get robbed." Robbed. The word came out thin, like my mouth had to remember how to form it. He pushed the envelope closer. "Open it." Inside were copies, bank statements, vendor letters. An email chain printed in black and gray, its subject lines marching like a drumbeat. Next Step's title package projected close. There was also a one-page summary on someone's letterhead I didn't recognize, Summit Vista Holdings, LLC. He tapped that page. "This is Daniel's company." I blinked at the sunburned ink. "Daniel doesn't have a company. We have a lodge." "He filed it 2 years ago," Lucas said. "In Santa Fe. He listed a mailing service for the address. He's been moving things, Mom, not big things, little consistent things. You were listed as a signer on one account, then not. A new credit line appeared and got used for capital improvements we never did. There's a draft asset transfer here, and this." He held up another sheet, the edges fuzzed by too many hands. It was a resolution template with a space for 2 signatures. The first space held Daniel's sloppy certainty. The second held my name neat and familiar. My stomach went cold. I knew that slope of the G, the way my E always tilted a hair to the left. "And yet, that is not mine," I said, each word a rock. "I know," Lucas said. "I took it to a friend who does design. He overlaid a signature from our business license on this. It's a copy, a good one, but it's not yours. Look at the pressure points. Whoever made this pressed where you never do." He slid me a magnifier we kept for old guests who liked to read by the window. The ink looked normal until it didn't. Someone had gotten so close to me they thought they could wear my hand like a glove. My phone buzzed on the desk. A booking inquiry. The ordinary world still ringing. I turned it face down. "You said months," I repeated, feeling steadier now that my body had decided it didn't have time to fall apart. "Why didn't you tell me then?" "Because I didn't know if it would break us worse." His throat worked. I thought maybe if I ended it with Savannah quietly, Dad would stop himself. I told her it was over. She cried, she begged, she made speeches about how much we were building together. It didn't sound like a girlfriend. It sounded like a partner on a deal. And then I found emails from a development group. They were scouting historic Western properties with boutique potential. The sagebrush was on a list. Our kitchen, your quilts, you. He set another printout down. Attachment site valuation, redevelopment plan, draft management agreement. My lodge had been sketched into a new life without me. A pool where the herb garden was, a spa room where the library sat, renderings that looked like a stranger's dream, all chrome and white napkins. If your father closes with them, Lucas said softly, we lose control. We keep a tiny piece maybe. Or nothing. Depends on how he papered it. But it moves fast. They need clean title. He has to remove you. Or make it look like you consented. That's the worst part. He can't do it without your signature, Mom. So he made one. I stared at the blank wall where Daniel had once hung a painting of the mesa. He took it down last month for reframing. He'd been removing frames for years, I realized, replacing them with stories that made sense only to him. From the courtyard, a guest laughed. The kettle in the kitchen began to hum thin and distant. The lodge wasn't falling. I was. I pushed my palms against the desk until the world steadied. You said we have to start now. My voice came from somewhere deep. Start what? Lucas glanced at the door as if Daniel could shapeshift through wood. We don't explode, he said. We don't give them the drama they expect. We freeze. You call a lawyer before lunch. We file whatever we have to file so nothing moves. I already made copies. The originals are hidden. The email threads are backed up. And there's one more thing. He took out a last document thinner than the rest, unremarkable, except for a line that punched me harder than any image had tentative itinerary. The dates were next week. Santa Fe to Dallas to Madrid, 2 passengers. Daniel and Savannah, I asked. Not by name, Lucas said. By initials, DC and SR. The email about it came from Savannah's old work account, the one she told me she never used anymore. In my mind, I saw Daniel leaning across the breakfast bar last month laughing about how he and I should finally take that trip to the coast we always talked about. We never talked about Madrid. We talked about fixing the roof before monsoon season, about repainting room 4, about switching coffee suppliers because the last batch tasted like regret. Okay, I said, surprising us both. The word landed like a hand on a shoulder. Lucas blinked. Okay. I smoothed my apron, then took it off. I have always done my best thinking without a uniform. You'll go to the front desk and smile at Mrs. Layton when she asks for dinner recommendations. I will walk to the kitchen and make eggs for the hikers who come down at 8. We will not look at the casita. We will not give them a scene to feed on. After breakfast, you will drive me into town. We'll find a lawyer who knows this terrain, and we will borrow her spine. He let out a breath he'd been swallowing. Mom, I don't, I said gently. Save it. Save all of it. You'll need it later when you tell the truth in a room that makes people sit up straight. We cleaned the prints with our eyes keeping the edges aligned like they might float away if we were careless. Lucas tucked the envelope back under the drawer where the dust waited to close over it. Do you want me to confront him? He asked. I shook my head. The refusal surprised me by how clean it felt. No. He has already been confronted by himself for months. You cannot outshout that kind of mirror. All we do now is turn on the light that makes it impossible to pretend. The kettle's whistle lifted full-throated. From the casita, a door opened. Steps crossed the flagstones. Voices brushed the air. Savannah's laugh stung lighter than a lie, sharper than a blade. I reached for the doorknob and paused. The office smelled like lemon oil and paper. For a moment I saw our first year here, Daniel hauling plaster me painting trim until my hands cramped. We argued about curtain rods. We slept on the floor because the mattress came a week late. We planted lavender because it felt like a promise you could smell. We used to be poor in a way that tasted like hope, Mom Lucas said. I am fine, I said, and knew I would be, though not today. We walked out together. The reception bell chimed once, bright as a small sunrise. I set plates in the warming drawer and cracked eggs into a bowl. The shells sounded like small decisions. Lucas poured coffee, steady hands, steady breath. The morning moved as if it didn't know what had happened, and maybe it didn't. People still asked about hiking trails. They still told us where they were from. I nodded and offered a map. Every yes I said was a border. Every no I kept was a wall. At 9:15, when the last of the hikers had gathered their day packs, I took off my apron again and hung it where it belonged. Lucas grabbed the keys. We stepped into the thin sun. The oaks made lace on the path. My lodge looked back at me like a child who had just learned its name. "Ready?" he asked. "No," I said, and opened the gate. "But we're going anyway." Part of me wanted to speed to burn through the road into town and outrun the image of the casita door. Instead, Lucas kept the truck at a decent pace, and I let the fields do their slow work on my eyes. Taos has a way of flattening panic with distance. Sky Mesa cottonwoods already yellowing. We passed the hardware store where Daniel and I used to buy screws, one bag at a time. The sign still flickered at the corner, like it couldn't decide whether to keep the lights on. "You know," Lucas said, eyes forward, "when I was a kid, I thought the lodge had a heartbeat." "It does," I said. "It borrows ours." He nodded, and we let the quiet settle again. We had built sagebrush the way you build a marriage when you're young and stubborn, with more nerve than money. The first winter the pipes froze, and we both cried at the same time in the same room, then laughed because neither one of us had ever seen the other cry before. There were months when housekeeping was me, and maintenance was Daniel, and breakfast was whatever the pantry allowed us to call breakfast. Rooms filled one by one, then summers started booking out. Our guest book grew fat with addresses and drawings of the mountains and the occasional sticky leaf a child insisted on adding. I sometimes opened that book just to remind myself we hadn't imagined the years. I had learned to read my husband by the way he fixed things. Early on, he replaced what was cracked. Later, he swapped what was fine for something shinier. An evolution, he called it. We used to argue about kitchen tile like it mattered. When business finally took a breath, the arguments went quiet. He started talking about taking some chips off the table, a phrase that did not belong to us. Every time he said it, I heard a door unlatch in his head. Lucas glanced at me, then back to the road. Savannah told me once that houses are just spreadsheets with roofs. "That is not a cook talking," I said. "She said it while dicing onions," he said. She cried at the cutting board, then smiled into the mirror of the knife. I remembered the first evening Savannah stepped into our kitchen. She wore a denim jacket like a uniform and called the lodge charming like it was a diagnosis. She brought a bottle of Spanish olive oil and a little speech about terroir. When she walked the halls, she counted steps under her breath. I thought it was nerves. I should have paid attention to the math. Lucas slowed as a mule deer crossed and paused to consider us, then sprang into the brush. "Do you remember the February when Dad stayed in Albuquerque for 3 nights because the wholesaler misplaced the sink fixtures? I remember the fixtures arriving on time," I said. He exhaled. That was the first time I saw her email signature. Savannah Reed Acquisitions. I stared at my hands. I keep my nails trimmed short because clean rooms snag on length. I had never imagined a world where my name could be trimmed off a deed. The town rose. We passed the gallery where we bought our wedding bowl, a piece of clay so blue it looked like someone had trapped a summer sky in it. We fought over whether to display it in reception or keep it in our kitchen. I won. The bowl lived beside the stove for decades, catching wooden spoons and grocery lists, and once our laughter when we tried to make meringues and ended up with a bowl of foam that tasted like chalk. Last week Daniel moved that bowl to a high shelf. "Looks safer there," he said, and I let it be. "We'll find a lawyer," Lucas said, as if speaking to the wheel. "A real one, not a cousin of a friend, someone who knows the words that stop other words." "We will," I said, "but first say it." He tightened his grip, then loosened it. "Say what?" "What you think of your father." Lucas swallowed. "I think he forgot how to be poor, and I think he's been practicing a story where the ending doesn't include us." That felt too true to argue with. I closed my eyes for a moment and saw Daniel in the garden last spring, cutting lavender like he was trimming thyme. He put the bundles in the shed and never hung them. They browned there, a little funeral I found by accident. We parked near the plaza. The square was waking up vendors lifting tarps, tourists looking for coffee, an old man playing a flute for a dog that refused to be charmed. Lucas helped me out like I was older than I felt. I let him. It made him feel useful, and I needed him steady. We stopped at a bench. Before we walk into anyone's office, I said, "I want to ask you something I should have asked months ago." He braced himself. "When did she change from person to plan in your head?" Lucas stared at the flagstones. She told me she loved me like we were both investors. She said love is vision plus execution. I laughed because it sounded like a billboard, but then she started scheduling us. She set up calendar invites for kisses. She wanted to practice our vows. Not the words, the timing. She said pauses calibrate audience empathy. He looked up at me, terrified he had been the fool. I thought I was building a life with a woman who likes systems. I didn't know I was the system. I touched his arm. You are not a system. You are my son. He let out a sound that was almost a laugh and almost a sob. You always cut through, he said. We stood. I took a breath that filled my ribs. Let's go find the knife. The first attorney we tried had succulents on the windowsill and a receptionist who loved questions. We got 10 minutes into our story before she interrupted with the name of the person we really needed. You want Priya, she said. She eats forged signatures for breakfast. Priya's office was in an old adobe with low ceilings and a door that made everyone shorter on entry. The sign on her desk said, "Keep receipts." She wore a navy dress and a look that made me sit up straighter without being told. Lucas explained the envelope, the company, the itinerary. I passed the prints. She took her time with each page, a pencil tapping in quiet rhythm. She said 3 phrases that mattered like water. Temporary restraining order, lis pendens, injunctive relief. Each one a hinge. She explained them cleanly without garnish. The restraining order would bar transfers. The lis pendens would act like a warning on the title, the legal equivalent of a bright red ribbon across a doorway. The injunction would stop any motion labeled improvement that smuggled sale under its coat. You do not confront, she said like a rule. You act. If this is as you say, your husband has given me enough to work with. A judge will not like to be tricked. Judges are people who have seen trickery and gotten bored of it. Lucas leaned forward. What about the signature? Priya turned the resolution to the light. It is not hers, she said, and moved on. The way you step past a snake you recognize. She asked for dates, account names, vendor contacts. She asked whether we had camera footage near the office. We did from a motion-activated unit Daniel insisted on installing after a guest's dog went missing and returned with a neighbor. Priya smiled at that and asked for access. You have a development interest, she said. They work fast because time is the only currency that appreciates for thieves. We will work faster. If I file by noon, I can have a hearing this afternoon. If the judge is in a mood, we get an order before dinner, if not morning. Either way, you go home and serve eggs as if the world is fair. I will make it behave. Her certainty felt like a blessed thing. I had spent a morning in doubt, and she was handing me nouns. I signed the engagement letter with a pen that felt too light. Lucas read every page because he's my son. I watched Priya assemble our life into a story the court would understand. She removed adjectives from my pain and converted it into facts. She made copies of our copies, then told Lucas where to lock the originals. She made a list of banks I needed to call and gave me a script that sounded like I had been telling banks what to do all my life. 2 more things, Priya said. File a police report for the forgery. It is not just leverage, it is the law. And consider applying for historic status at the county level. It slows development even when money moves. You have a building that breathes 100 years. Make the county write it down. Lucas smiled for the first time since the casita. That idea was mine, he said. It is now ours, Priya said. On the walk back to the truck, I felt taller than I had in days. The sky had not changed, but it looked less like a ceiling and more like a roof we owned. Lucas held the door, and I slid in. How are you? He asked, the shape of the question different now that we had a plan. Not good, I said, and he started to protest until I added, which is fine. We drove out of town beside a pickup loaded with lumber. The driver drummed the steering wheel at a light, and I thought about Daniel's hands doing the same at our kitchen table when a bill annoyed him. Hands that had held my face and fixed a sink and signed my name without me. I did not know which part of him I was grieving. At the turnoff to the lodge, we slowed. From the road, sagebrush looked like a place between stories. The ristras swung in the breeze. The lavender hedges needed cutting. A family unloaded suitcases near reception, their smallest child dragging a stuffed bear by one ear. After this is over, Lucas said we should reseal the patio. After this is over, I said we should sit on it. We parked. I checked my phone. A message from Priya filing submitted hearing at 3 will update. Another from the bank, please call. I looked at Lucas. The world was coming in like weather. We would open umbrellas in order, then close them and go back to work. I reached for the door handle and stopped. I need to ask you one more thing, I said. When we walk in there and they look at us, can you keep your face ordinary? He smiled without joy. I can. It is how I survived middle school. Then let's go, I said. We stepped into reception. The bell chimed. A guest asked if the trail to the overlook was shaded. I answered like I was still the woman she took me to be. Across the courtyard, the casita door opened. Daniel emerged, hair-smoothed shirt, tucked the picture of a man who had been nowhere he shouldn't. Savannah followed radiant with borrowed light. Lucas and I turned in tandem, a practiced move that looked like grace. I reached for the register, the same book that had held our guests' doodles for years, and ran my hand along its spine, feeling the weight of the names that had trusted us to be steady. We were, for now. Lucas and I did the ordinary work first. We checked in the family with the stuffed bear, gave them a trail map, showed them where the water station was. I smiled at the child and remembered the years when Lucas ran these halls with a towel for a cape. The world kept moving like it did not know what we had learned. When the front desk quieted, Lucas tipped his head toward the office. We closed the door and he pulled out another envelope. This one was slimmer, labeled in a handwriting I did recognize mine, except it was the old way I used to write my name before arthritis corrected my flourish. That was the first chill. I made a list, he said. He handed me a single sheet, his notes printed blocky and practical. How she arrived, how she made herself useful, how she positioned Dad. It's not just the affair, it's architecture. How she arrived, I read. He leaned against the file cabinet like he needed something solid. We met at a food truck festival in Portland. She said she was in culinary school, laughing at how late she'd be graduating because life kept getting in the way. She knew the language. She could talk about smoke and acid and why beans need salt early. It sounded right until I started counting what she did not know. She burned a roux and called it rustic. She bought prepped mirepoix and hid the packaging. I thought about the night she made a sauce that was somehow glossy and flat. I had chalked it up to nerves. What did she do? No contracts, he said. Timelines. The difference between letter of intent and purchase agreement. She could price a kitchen remodel after walking through once. She had opinions about lenders. When she talked about food, she lit up for 5 minutes. When she talked about projects, she hummed. He slid me his phone. There were screenshots of her LinkedIn, a profile that had been wiped down to memory but not erased. Cached pages with her photo next to words that did not belong to a chef. Acquisitions associate. Historic repositioning. Portfolio growth. You dug deep, I said. I wish I had dug sooner. He scrolled to an email header. The sender was Savannah's old work account, the one she told him she had closed. The subject said, site visit follow-up. The body praised Daniel's openness and mentioned Phase 1 transfer to Summit Vista as planned. It also attached an itemized list that made my chest go tight. Landscaping furniture art. Under art, a simple line, personal items to be secured prior to closing. They cataloged us, I said. Lucas nodded. There's more. He had tracked the origins of Summit Vista. Daniel had formed it 2 summers ago, right after a hailstorm that forced us to replace 2 roofs. I remembered the timing because I had been eaten alive by insurance calls. While I argued about depreciation, he opened a bank account. A month later, he opened a mailbox at a strip mall down the highway. You do not set up a life you plan to keep in a rented box. Lucas set out a timeline like he was laying rail. The first vendor switched to e-billing. The second account needed only 1 signer. A small loan in the lodge's name was paid off early, then an equal amount appeared as a line of credit under Summit Vista. He pulled invoices that had been coded as improvements. Lighting we never installed, staging we never ordered. An architect's retainer for a set of renderings that had the lodge wearing someone else's face. He showed me the renderings last. They were glossy, the kind of images that win over people who think old bones are a problem to be solved. A pool cut the courtyard in half. The library vanished under a wellness suite. Room 3 became something called a signature experience. Every rose bush in the side garden was gone. The verandas had been scrubbed of wood and given glass. I traced a finger along the fake water. "It looks expensive," I said. "It looks fast," he said. "Fast is expensive when it is wrong." We fell quiet. In the silence, I could hear the ice machine cycle and the broad hush of tires on the highway. Somewhere beyond, Daniel and Savannah were still performing breakfast for each other. I tried to let that thought pass like a train I did not have to board. How did he become this man, I asked finally. Lucas stared at the ceiling like it might have an answer. "I think he got bored of his own goodness," he said. "You were still working." He was shopping for something to prove he was not finished. Under the notes, a smaller sheet. It was a printout of a staff message board from a development firm. Anonymous titles. An acquisitions team trading stories. One post months old mentioned a souvenir property in the high desert owned by a long-married couple, no debt, strong bookings, chronic underpricing. The tone was cheerful. The last line made my mouth dry. Owner-husband aligned. Owner-wife in the way. "Where did you get this?" I asked. Public Lucas said. "Hidden behind a marketing URL they thought no one read. I saved what I could." I sat with the phrase in the way. It made me think of myself as furniture to be moved. It made me feel like a mountain. "Read this," he said, passing the last document. A prenup draft. It used my maiden name. It laid out a separation between marital assets and business assets. Dated last month. He asked her to marry him before he divorced me, I said, measuring each word so it did not shatter. Lucas lifted a hand as if to catch something falling. "It is a draft," he said. He did not file. He was playing with the bones. I thought of Daniel sitting at the kitchen table last week, pen scratching, telling me he was updating our emergency contacts for the insurance forms. I had made soup. He had been drafting a life where I kept my last name and lost everything else. Here is the part that matters. Lucas said, moving us back to rock. "We now understand the shape of it. Affairs are messy. Paper is neat. We work where it is neat." He took a photo of the prenup and sent it to Priya with a note I could not see. My phone buzzed almost at once. Her reply was short. "Keep that safe. Do not confront." Hearing at 3 confirmed. I exhaled. The sound startled me. "We will win," I said, unsure if I believed it but needing to say it. "We will stop," he said. "Winning comes later." At noon, Savannah breezed into reception with a tray of scones she said she had baked. I thanked her and set them on the counter. Guests will eat anything that looks like welcome. She asked if Lucas could help her move a case of wine from the casita. He said later, his voice smooth as polished wood. Daniel came in 2 minutes after her and asked if he could talk to me about changing the linens in room 6 to a lighter weight. It was the kind of question he would use when he wanted to sound like a man tuned into comfort. I told him we would review inventory at 4. He held my eye too long, then smiled like a photo you throw away. Through the afternoon, I worked down a list that Priya had made for me. I called the bank and repeated her exact words. I asked for the fraud department. I used file numbers. I said my name like it was a password. Doors opened. I removed Daniel's authority from 2 accounts and placed alerts on any transaction that looked like motion without origin. I called the county clerk and asked about filing a notice regarding our title. The clerk liked rules. She told me exactly how to write the line about disputes. I followed it like a recipe. At 2, Lucas knocked on the casita door to ask Savannah for a recipe she had promised a guest. When the door opened, he glanced past her shoulder and saw a suitcase half-packed, neatly rolled shirts, a garment bag laid across the bed. She laughed that she was reorganizing her wardrobe. He said he would come back for the recipe. We recorded the time. Small facts stacked. Back in the office, we cleaned our story again. Lucas removed any word that sounded like a wound and replaced it with a date. I signed a police report for the forgery, my hand steady. I have written my name tens of thousands of times. Today it felt like reclaiming a deed. At 2:40, Priya called. "You have your order," she said. "Temporary restraining order granted." Liz Pendens noted. "You are now a problem for any buyer. And a problem for your husband." I leaned against the desk. "What now?" "You go serve cobbler," she said. "You do not say a word. If he brings you paper, you smile and say you will pass it to your attorney. If he asks why vendors are stalling, you say the internet at the county is slow today. If he gets loud, you get quiet. Quiet wins in rooms like yours. After I hung up, I stood at the office window and looked at the courtyard. The light was long. The ristress leaned like full sentences. 2 guests sat under the pergola with iced tea maps across their knees, making plans for sunset. The life we made was still here, humble and whole. Someone had tried to draw over it. We had redrawn the lines. Lucas came to stand next to me. "I know this is going to get worse before it gets better," he said. "It will get clearer," I said. "Clarity hurts. It also cleans." He nodded. "There is one more thing I have not told you." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet pouch. He opened it and poured the contents into his palm. My mother's cameo pendant looked up at me, the profile delicate and stubborn. "I found this in Savannah's drawer last week," he said softly. I was going to put it back and pretend I had not seen it. I could not. I touched the little face, felt both the theft and the return. "We will add it to the list," I said. "Things that come home." Outside, a car pulled in. New guests, new names to add to the register. I closed my hand over the pendant and let the day shift into evening. The secret had a shape now. So did our answer. Priya did not waste our time with comfort. She handed me a checklist and turned our morning into verbs: file, freeze, flag, notify. We sat at her conference table while she dictated the order of operations, and Lucas typed it into a shared note like a medic recording vitals. I felt my pulse steady to her cadence. "First," she said, "we make it impossible to move title without your knowledge. The lis pendens is recorded. The court granted the restraining order. I will serve notice on the registered agent for Summit Vista and on your husband. You will not. You will be busy being reliable in view of witnesses." Lucas raised a hand. "About serving Daniel. He is at the lodge all day." "Good," she said. "The process server will find him there. Let him perform surprise for the audience." She slid me a police report template and a separate affidavit for the forged signature. We had already filed with the local department, but this one named specific documents by date account and scanned image. "You are documenting for 3 arenas," she said. "Civil court criminal inquiry and the court of public opinion in case this spills into gossip. We do not aim for the 3rd, but we are not naive." She called the county recorder while we sat. "Yes, it is urgent," she said into the receiver. "Yes, we appreciate your speed. No, my client will not be signing anything today. Probably ever again if it was not her idea." She rattled off parcel numbers like she brushed her teeth with them. Then the pivot. "Historic designation," Priya said. "It is not a magic shield, but it slows change. The building has age integrity and community use. Those are the 3 legs. You can file a preliminary application today. The formal review takes months. We do not need months. We need resistance." She introduced us by phone to a preservation planner named Ortiz. He spoke like he had been defending Adobe his whole life. "We like your place," he said. "We have sent visitors there at holidays. Submit photos of original features, construction dates, any narrative of the property's role in Tao's hospitality. Also letters from neighbors if you can." "We can," I said, hearing the old fundraiser in my voice wake up. "People have stayed with us for seasons. Tell them to write like it matters," Ortiz said. "It does." Priya glanced at the clock. "We have 90 minutes before your 3 o'clock hearing. Go home. You let me file and fight. You gather evidence no one can dispute. Original purchase documents, old photos, guestbook pages, the pendants and paintings that predate your marriage, if any, since counsel for your husband will try to muddy separate and marital assets. If you own it from before, prove it. If you do not prove, your hand built the business anyway. Courts like makers." Lucas stood. "If Daniel brings in an appraiser or investor while we are home," "You smile," she said. "You play host. You do not let them into the office. You offer to schedule a meeting later. You offer nothing on paper. If anyone produces a business card, you take a photo of it and email it to me." We left with 2 neat folders and a list of tasks that used up panic. I did not look back at Priya's door. I did not need to. Her words had already moved into our truck with us. On the drive, Lucas called the bank fraud unit again and placed verbal passwords on the accounts, so any change required my voice. He added text alerts to every card and every automatic payment. Each ping felt like a fence post hammered in. I called the vendor who supplied our linens and told them to hold any order over a certain amount without my confirmation. "You saving money or making trouble?" the rep joked. "Both," I said. The lodge was having a steady day. A couple from Denver checked out and hugged me like we were old friends. A biker leaned his helmet on the counter and asked if he could book the same room next month. Normal kept showing up. I let it. We worked through the tasks in sequence. Lucas scanned the original deed and our first business license. I went to the back closet and pulled out the old photo box, the one that smelled like cedar and thyme. We laid childhood snapshots of the lodge on the desk, Daniel sanding a banister, Lucas tottering with a hammer too big for his fist, me with paint in my hair. We took photos of the photos and sent them to Ortiz. If a board of strangers was going to judge our building, they could see the family who had made it breathe. At 1:40, there was a knock on the reception door. A man in a navy blazer stood with a clipped smile and a legal-sized envelope. He asked for Mr. Cole. I paged Daniel on the intercom. When he rounded the corner adjusting his shirt cuffs, the server said his name verified his identity and handed him the papers with the cool politeness of someone who delivers endings for a living. Daniel's eyes flicked across the first page. Surprise flashed, then flattened. He looked up at me. If he expected a scene, I denied him. I asked the couple at the desk if they preferred soft or firm pillows. Daniel folded the papers and slipped them under his arm like they were a flyer he did not want to be caught with. He walked to the casita without a word. Savannah came in 10 minutes later, humming nothing. She asked Lucas where we kept the extra candles for the courtyard lanterns. He told her. She lingered. "Big day," she said lightly. "Big enough," Lucas said, and went back to the ledger. At 2, a text from Priya Judge on time. "Connected by video. I will update." I wiped down the front counter and waited without pacing. Waiting is something lodges teach you. Guests arrive when they arrive. Weather changes on its own schedule. You prepare, then you stay ready. The phone rang. "Priya, orders signed," she said. "Summit Vista is enjoined from taking any action on the property. The lis pendens is indexed. If any buyer searches title, they will see a bright red light. I have sent letters to the 2 investor names you gave me. If they claim ignorance later, I will show the court the time stamps." "What about the accounts?" Lucas asked on speaker. "The bank has flagged and created a case number. Any attempt to move funds triggers a manual review. I am sending you both a list of scripts if you get calls from anyone pretending to be from the bank. Do not be helpful. Be exact." I stared through the window at the courtyard. A breeze shifted the ristras. For the first time since the hallway glass had shown me my son's face, I felt the shape of something like safety. We hung up and went back to being useful. Lucas printed a sign about quiet hours. I restocked the tea station. At 3:30, a woman in hiking boots asked if there was a story behind the name Sagebrush. I told her the truth. Daniel wanted to call it the Pines because pine sounded fancy. I pointed to the scrub that survives everything and said we should honor the plant that keeps its grip. We laughed at our young selves back then. Today the name sounded like a decision I had made for a woman I had not met yet. Around 4, an SUV with a rental sticker pulled in. 2 men in suits stepped out carrying folios. They had the look of people who did not care for dust. Lucas and I exchanged the smallest glance. They introduced themselves as consultants with a hospitality firm out of Santa Fe. They wanted to speak to management about optimization options. It was the sort of phrase that explains itself if you let it rot in the sun. "Management is here," I said. "How can I help you?" They asked to review occupancy trends and capital plans. They spoke with the confidence of men used to access. I smiled. "We are full for the weekend and happy about fall," I said. "We do annual repairs after Thanksgiving. If you have a card, I will pass it along to our attorney and she can schedule a time." They exchanged a quick look, a flicker of impatience or recognition. One handed me a card. I photographed it on the counter with the date in frame and texted it to Priya. "Thank you," she replied. "Do not let them near your office." I had not planned to. Daniel appeared 3 minutes into their pitch, his smile pulled tight. "We can discuss in private," he told them. My wife is busy. Your wife is management, I said. If there is a discussion, it includes me. He adjusted, turned the charm toward me. Honey, they are offering us a free assessment. Nothing in hospitality is free, I said. We are assessed every day by people who sleep in our beds and pay for the privilege. They stayed polite for a few beats, then left cards and took their leave with a promise to circle back. Savannah watched from the casita door, arms folded, calculating something I refused to carry for her. After they drove off, Daniel tried a new tone, friendly, faintly wounded. You blindsided me, he said under his breath. No, I said. You thought I would stay blind. Different thing. He stepped closer. We should talk tonight. We should not, I said. We should serve our guests. He reached for my hand. I moved it to the register and wrote down the name of the next arrival like it was an oath. As evening leaned in, the phone buzzed again. Ortiz, the preservation planner. We got your packet, he said. Strong case. I am flagging it for preliminary review next week. It is not a shield, but it is a storm door. Thank you, I said. One more thing, he added. If anyone approaches you about immediate renovations, ask them to submit a heritage impact note. It will discourage the impatient. I smiled into the receiver. We have an entire lodge full of impatience proofing. We hung up and I went to the kitchen. Lucas followed. We worked side by side at the prep table without needing to narrate. He sliced apples for cobbler. I measured flour. The oven heat fogged the window and hid the courtyard for a moment. When the fog cleared, I saw the guest with the stuffed bear racing around the fountain, the toy held aloft like a banner. The ordinary had not abandoned us. We had invited it to stay. After dinner service, I took the cameo pendant from my pocket and placed it in the office safe. I wrote a small list on a card and taped it inside the safe door. Items to return to rightful place. It looked like a prayer. Before bed, Lucas printed 2 copies of Priya's order and slid one under the office phone, one into the front desk drawer. If someone tried something in the hours when people let down their guard, we would have paper at our fingertips. I turned off the lobby lights and stood a minute in the half-dark. The lodge breathed. The rooms held warm bodies and dreams we would never know. I could not mend my marriage tonight. I could not stop Daniel from playing a role he had rehearsed without me. But I could make this place hard to steal. That would be enough for one day. When I finally lay down in the bed I had shared for 4 decades, I faced the wall and listened to the wind comb the cottonwoods. Somewhere in the casita, a suitcase zipper moved. Somewhere down the highway, a truck downshifted. I closed my eyes and pictured the word on the judge's order. Enjoined. A line drawn. A door braced. In the morning we would wake up and keep bracing. We woke to a sky the color of old denim and a forecast that promised more wind than answers. I brewed coffee and set out muffins like any other morning. The ink on the court order had dried while we slept. Paper has a way of turning fear into a to-do list. Lucas and I did not speak about Daniel when we did the rounds. We checked water jugs, tested the bell at the front desk, straightened the brochures about galleries and hikes. The work kept our faces ordinary. At 9, Savannah floated in from the casita with a glossy magazine and a question about centerpieces. She set the magazine on the counter and smiled like last night had been a rehearsal for joy. "Do we love eucalyptus, or is that played out?" she asked, flipping pages. "We love family being present," I said, "and we love everyone being well enough to fully enjoy it." I kept my tone gentle. Which is why Lucas and I have been talking. His Aunt Kathy took a fall in Phoenix. She is his godmother. We think it is wiser to postpone for a few weeks so she can travel. It was a lie with just enough truth to hold. Kathy does have knees that complain about stairs. Savannah's smile froze, then thawed. Postpone, she repeated like the syllables had splinters. How many weeks? A handful, I said. We will contact the vendors so no one is left guessing. Lucas slid in next to me, his posture easy. We want everyone there, he said. She helped raise me. Savannah's eyes flicked to Daniel's office door, then back. Of course, she said. We adapt. The word landed wrong. She straightened a stack of maps that did not need straightening. I will call the florist. She left the magazine on the counter. The spread she had dog-eared featured long tables in a warehouse with hanging bulbs and an absence of air. It looked like a party you survive. Daniel came in soon after, already braced. "What is this about postponing?" he said lightly, emphasizing the question as if charm could smooth out facts. "We do not control accidents," I said. "We do control our calendar." He glanced at Lucas, found no help there, and pivoted. "We should take advantage of the lull," he said. "Do some updates. People have been asking about a hot tub." "People ask for the moon," I said. "We offer stars." He exhaled through his nose, a sound I recognized from years of hearing him face a stuck bolt. "A month is a long time to idle," he murmured. "We have fall bookings," I said, "and work to do. Also, Daniel, a process server came by yesterday." He went still. I noticed he said, aiming for breezy and missing. "We can talk later." "We can serve breakfast now," I said, and stepped around him. The rest of the morning required theater. Guests asked about ghost tours and ceramics. Set the table with light. Keep your voice even. Lucas handled calls to vendors about the postponement, using a script that emphasized appreciation and certainty. He promised new dates by the end of the week. Most were gracious. One venue coordinator tried to impose a penalty. Lucas recited a clause, paused for her to check, then thanked her when she withdrew the fee. He is better at law when he is tired. At 11, my phone buzzed. Priya had texted a reminder if approached by buyers or brokers, collect contact data and do not elaborate. She added a second line. County recorder filed the lis pendens online. Title search now shows dispute. Take a breath. I took it. It did not fill all the way, but it helped. Around lunch, I carried a tray of iced tea through the courtyard and paused near the herb bed when I heard voices from the open casita window. Savannah's tone was sharp, not for public ears. "They are slowing us down," she said. "This window will close." Daniel's reply was lower. "We cannot force a sale with a lis pendens. Our agent says the buyer's counsel flagged it. They want a clean report." "What about the alternate path, then?" she hissed. "The one Marcelo mentioned. Management agreement first. Transfer after. Less scrutiny." "We do not have the cash flexibility with accounts locked," he said. "I am working on it." "You had months," she snapped, then lowered her voice. "If you want Spain, you need to stop acting married to the building." I kept walking, serving tea to people who thought the only drama in Taos was the light. Lucas joined me at the pergola. He had the look of a man holding two lives and choosing one. "We should move on historic status today," he said under his breath. "It will spook any firm that wants speed." "I already sent Ortiz our packet," I said. He pushed us to preliminary review. "Next week." "Good," Lucas said. "Let's mention it at dinner. See which face Dad chooses." He meant the family supper we sometimes had with staff, a long table near the kitchen, where we ate what we served and let the day drop its guard. We kept that ritual intact. Rituals teach buildings how to behave. By afternoon, the house quieted. The couple with the bear napped. The bikers took the scenic loop. The phone stopped chattering. The silence felt rehearsed. I used it to write 3 letters to loyal guests who lived in town, people who had come for birthdays and funerals, and the kinds of anniversaries you don't post online. I asked them to write endorsements for the historic status application. I did not mention my marriage. I wrote about the lodge as a citizen. At 4, Savannah reappeared with an inventory request. "We are light on votives," she said, scanning a list. "Also, these sheets feel rough. We should brand the experience. Upgrade to a signature scent. Think cedar and leather." "We are not a men's catalog," I said. "We are a place with doors that fit." Her smile whitened. "This is about growth, Maggie." "This is about fit," I said. "Scale is not always growth." She tucked hair behind her ear and let the mask slip. "You are standing in the way," she said. "You think that is noble, but it is not. It is sentimental. The market does not care about your story. The market," I said, "does not sleep in our rooms. People do." Something in my voice made her move back half an inch. She regained her posture in a breath. "You will tire of fighting," she said. "Everyone does." "Not everyone," I said, and turned to answer the ringing phone. At 6, we set the staff table. It was smaller than in summer. 2 housekeepers and our handyman joined us. Lucas ladled stew. Savannah took the spot beside Daniel. I sat across from them and offered bread. The overhead bulb hummed like a faraway hive. "How is the trail maintenance?" I asked our handyman, and listened while he described a washout he had patched with old timbers. The housekeepers compared notes on guests who left notes and guests who left toothpaste in the sink. This is how a lodge holds its center. Halfway through the meal, Daniel cleared his throat. "I met with consultants," he said, aiming for casual. "They think we could modernize without losing character." "Consultants are paid to suggest motion," I said. He smiled at the table as if to include them in a joke we were all tired of. "Change is not the enemy." "Agreed," I said. "Amnesia is." Lucas set down his spoon. By the way he said, as if recalling a small thing, we submitted our preliminary application for historic designation. "The county likes the lodge. We may get review next week." The room shifted. Our housekeeper smiled and clapped once. "It deserves a plaque," she said. Daniel's eyebrows leaped and then settled. "That is bureaucratic," he said. "It will tie our hands on improvements. It will protect what guests come for," I said. "The bones." Savannah set her napkin down. "Historic status depresses value," she said. "Ask any developer." "We did," I said. "He told us to tell our story." Dinner ended. Dishes clinked. People drifted to evening chores. Daniel lingered. He looked at the bread basket as though it might offer counsel. "We should talk," he said again. "Then talk," I said. He rubbed his jaw. "You are making this harder than it has to be. We can take the offer. We can stay on in name. You can do the pretty parts. The work goes to other people. We take the money. We travel. We rest." "We could have rested without stealing from ourselves," I said. "You just had to ask for a season off. Instead, you rewrote the ending while I was cooking." He stepped close. "I was trying to spare you decisions. Decisions are where we find out who we are," I said. Savannah approached a glass in hand. "We have a call with Marcelo at 9, she told Daniel. "Do you want me to loop you in from the casita or use your office?" He glanced at me. I did not blink. "Use the casita," he said. She breezed away. Lucas came to stand beside me like he was a column. "Mom," he said, "do you want me at the call?" "I want you in the office with the camera feed on," I said. "And I want you to make sure the recorder is charged." He nodded once. "Done." At 8:30, I walked the property. The air had cooled. The cottonwoods made their evening music. I passed the casita and heard Daniel's voice through the open transom, eager and careful. Words like bridge loan and interim control floated in the dark. A second voicemail, slick as new glass, said phrases about options. The third voice said timeline. I kept moving. We had filed. We had flagged. We had frozen. Now we would listen and let the net tighten. Quiet makes greedy people over-explain. Inside, Lucas sat at the desk with the monitor on volume low. The camera that Daniel insisted we install outside the office door years ago showed the casita porch. We saw silhouettes in rectangles of light. We saw a courier arrive with a package near 9:15 signed for by Savannah. She carried it inside with both hands, careful as a thief who believes she will not be caught. My phone buzzed again. Priya, 2 lines. Reminder, do not intercept. Document. And second bank flagged attempted transfer, blocked pending manual review. Good. You are holding. I placed the phone on the desk and looked at my son. He looked back, jaw set, eyes clear. "We keep our masks on," I said. "We let the law take theirs off." He smiled the smallest smile. "Tomorrow?" he asked. "Tomorrow," I said. "We do it again." By morning, the wind had a new edge, the kind that makes power lines sing. Lucas checked the camera feed and the calendar in the same motion. We had slept in our separate rooms like housemates who had learned not to wake each other with bad dreams. At 8, Priya called. "No pleasantries. 2 items," she said. 1, your orders are reflected in the title database across the major search platforms. Any serious buyer sees the dispute now. 2, I looped in a contact at the district attorney's office. Expect a detective to reach out. Be exact with him. Do not narrate. Copy, I said. My voice had turned into her voice over the last 2 days. It suited me. He called before the coffee finished. "Alvarez," he said. "Financial crimes. I do not wear sunglasses indoors, and I do not believe in miracles, but I chase paper like it owes me money." I almost laughed. "You will have a lot to chase." He asked for an hour after breakfast service. I said yes and hung up to fill plates. People talked about the wind and whether the Overlook Trail would be muddy. The bear child had promoted the toy to sheriff and issued tickets to anyone who moved too fast. I appreciated the enforcement. At 9:30, Alvarez arrived in a jacket that did not try to intimidate. He had the habit of looking at corners more than faces. We took him to the office and closed the door. Lucas spread the envelope contents like a syllabus. Alvarez took notes in 2 colors of ink. Timeline, he said. Lucas gave it to him without spare adjectives. When he reached the forged resolution, Alvarez angled the paper toward the window. "Your G goes left," he said to me. "This one goes right. Amateur work if you know what you are looking at. Plenty good enough if you do not." He sounded both resigned and satisfied, like a mechanic who had seen the same failure a dozen times and still respected the machine. He asked about accounts vendors and trips Daniel had taken in the last year. I supplied dates and receipts. Lucas added a list of Savannah's deliveries that had nothing to do with cooking. Boxes from office supply outlets, a laminator for labels we had never used, a portable scanner. "Do you have her old email credentials?" Alvarez asked. Lucas shook his head. "She changed them after I confronted her. But cached pages exist. I saved some." "Send me what you have," Alvarez said. "I will get the rest the polite way, and if polite fails, the other way." He asked to see the camera feed. Lucas showed him the angles: the office exterior, the courtyard, the parking lot, the casita porch. Alvarez nodded once. "Enough to tell a story," he said. "Not enough to sentence a man, but we are not sentencing today." He called someone and rattled off our parcel number like he had memorized it on the walk from his car. Then he asked the question that mattered. "Is there a flight?" he said. "If they are trying to finish the game, they do not do it standing still." Lucas pulled up the itinerary he had found. The dates had blurred into my dread. Seeing them fixed on the screen sharpened my fear and my focus. Santa Fe to Dallas to Madrid. Tomorrow night. Alvarez wrote it down. "That gives me less time than I prefer, and more than some folks get," he said. "I will open the case today. You will file a formal statement to the police station to anchor the forgery. I need probable cause that a crime has been committed and that they are preparing to leave the jurisdiction with proceeds. You have given me both. I will ask the DA for warrants on accounts and communications. If a judge likes me, I will get them by evening." Lucas leaned forward. "What do we do meanwhile?" "You host," Alvarez said. "You let them think the stage is theirs. You do not tip your hand. You keep your valuables where they cannot be pocketed. You text me if any stranger arrives who speaks in words like optimization or bridge. You text me if bags start walking to a trunk." He looked at me. "You have been doing a version of this for 2 days," he said. "Do it again. I will work while your guests hike." He left the office with a nod to our sign that said, "Welcome." I locked the office and we went back to work. Savannah came through reception in a dress that looked accidental and wasn't. She asked the housekeeper about turn-down service like a person who had practiced saying "turn down" in the mirror. Daniel trailed her with a clipboard. He did not carry clipboards. Today he did. At noon, Priya called with a new tone. "Bank confirmed attempted transfer at 11:53, she said. "Blocked pending review. The destination bank for the wire is in Spain." I forwarded the case numbers to Alvarez. "Thank you," I said, and realized the words were too small. "Please keep pulling." "I will," she said. "Remember, silence is not surrender, it is strategy." I wrote that down on a sticky and stuck it to the monitor where my future self could read it if my courage tried to shrink. After lunch, Lucas checked the casita camera and froze. "Look," he said. Savannah had pulled a rolling suitcase into the doorway. Daniel was handing her a stack of folders bound by a thick rubber band. She slit the band with a nail and sorted the papers into 2 piles the fast motion of a person used to speed. She placed one stack into the suitcase, the other into a messenger bag. The courier package from last night sat open on the bed. Inside a small fireproof document pouch and something wrapped in plain brown paper. She unfolded the paper. A passport book shone blue in the light. Lucas snapped stills. "I sent them to Alvarez with the timestamp." He replied in under a minute. "Got it. Hold steady. Officer in unmarked will stage across the road." The wind picked up outside, pushing a loose sign against the fence. The sound gave the afternoon a metronome. We matched it with tasks. Lucas printed the evening check in sheets. I ran a cloth over the front desk until it squeaked. The ordinary is a shield when you hold it the right way. At 3, the phone rang. A vendor asking about the postponed reception. I confirmed the pause and thanked her for her patience. She said something kind and then something curious. "I hope the management company is not giving you grief," she said. "They called yesterday to ask about your inventory." "What company?" I asked, calm as a ceiling fan. "Summit Vista," she said. "A woman named Reed. She said she was consolidating records." "Thank you for telling me," I said and made a note. Alvarez would like that sentence. At 4, Alvarez called back. "Warrants issued," he said. "We are moving on the accounts and requesting phone records. If they try to withdraw cash today, they will experience inconvenience." "Will you intervene before they leave?" I asked. The question tasted like hope and fear. "If they move now," he said, "we will not wait for tomorrow. If they sit tight, we let the rope go slack. People who think they are clever always lean into slack." We ended the call and tried to act like the air in the room had not changed. The housekeeper asked me if we needed extra towels for the hikers. I said yes. Lucas restocked the tea. The bear child marched through the lobby on a mission only he knew. I was jealous of his clarity. At 6, Daniel appeared at the front desk with a smile he had rehearsed as a young man and used like currency ever since. "Dinner," he said, "not a question. Just us. We deserve that much." It was not a good idea. It was exactly the right idea. "Yes," I said. "Let me put on a sweater." Lucas watched my face as Samuel would a sky. "You sure?" he asked. "Do you have the recorder?" I asked back. "In my pocket," he said. "Charged." "Then yes," I said, and turned to the back room. I took exactly 1 minute. Sweater, purse, phone. I stood in the mirror long enough to remind myself of my name. On the way out, I passed the office and set the recorder in its cradle to sync a fresh file with the desk computer. Lucas slid me a small nod. We had practiced this dance. Daniel held the truck door for me like chivalry could erase a spreadsheet. He talked about the light on the mesa, as if noticing made him a poet. All the way down the drive, I felt the eyes of the unmarked car across the road. They were looking at us the way we had looked at Savannah with her suitcase, as if we were a problem that could be solved by showing up at the right time. We went to a restaurant where we had eaten after our first good review. The hostess' smile did not reach her eyes. Daniel ordered a bottle of wine without consulting me. He used to ask what I wanted. The wine arrived. The waiter poured and left us to the emptiness that happens when there are too many words you will not use. Daniel folded his hands on the table. "We can repair this," he said. "We can finish it," I said. "Repair requires truth." He launched a parable about tired backs and how every man dreams of waking without a schedule. He spoke as if he had been trapped by the lodge, not held by it. I let him have his script. The recorder in my purse listened better than I did. Then my phone vibrated. Lucas's text was a sentence I will remember longer than vows. "2 men just arrived, not the consultants. Laura style, loading documents, officer moving." I put my napkin on the table and stood. "I forgot to leave instructions for a late check-in," I said. "I need to call." Daniel placed a hand on my wrist. "Sit," he said softly. Control sounded like tenderness in public. "I will not be a minute," I said, and stepped away to the hallway with the payphone that no longer took coins. I called Lucas. He kept his voice low. "They have a hatchback," he said. "Savannah is directing. They put the pouch in first, then the folders. Daniel's old briefcase. The officer is on the radio." "Record," I said. "I am," he said. "Come back if you can. If not, stay where he cannot say we moved the pieces." I returned to the table. Daniel searched my face and found nothing he could use. "Everything all right?" he asked, like a line on a form. "Everything is moving," I said. He tried again. "After tonight, can we be kinder?" "After tonight," I said, "we will be accurate." We finished nothing. When he signaled the bill, his hand shook and he pulled it back into his lap. The waiter set down the check and slid away. Daniel slipped his card under the paper, like hiding would lower the number. On the drive back, he gripped the wheel and talked about us as if we were another couple he had met on a plane. I looked out at the dark between the headlight beams. Taos at night is honest. It does not pretend to be more than it is. When we turned onto our road, red and blue lights flashed up the cottonwoods. Daniel braked too hard. Gravel popped. "What did you do?" he whispered. "What you taught me," I said. I called for help when something was too heavy. We rolled to a stop. Officers moved like people who knew where they were going. The hatchback doors were open. Savannah stood with her hands spread, smiling, like a person who had forgotten what teeth are for. Two men faced a car with their palms on the roof. Lucas stepped from the office with his shoulders square and his eyes clear. Alvarez met us at the walk with a nod that was almost a bow. "Mr. Cole," he said, "we have some questions for you." He turned to me, his voice changing temperature. "Ms. Cole, thank you for your patience." I took a breath. It went all the way down. The courtyard looked like every other evening we had lived through, except for the lights and the officers, and the way the air seemed to hold its own breath. Alvarez walked past Daniel toward the hatchback without raising his voice. "Step back, please," he said to Savannah. "Hands where I can see them." Savannah lifted her palms like a stage cue and tried a smile. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked, aiming for friendly. Her eyes were measuring exits. "Not if my paperwork is good," Alvarez said, and nodded to the plainclothes officer posted by the gate. The man lifted his radio and gave 2 short updates in a code that made sense to someone else. I moved to Lucas's side. His phone was in his hand. The screen showed the camera feed from the casita still recording. He had also started a separate video on his phone as the officers arrived. Redundancy is a habit I wish I had learned years ago. Alvarez opened the hatchback. The fireproof pouch sat on top like a heart in a chest. He did not touch it. He cataloged his view out loud for the record. 1 pouch, 1 messenger bag, 2 folders, 1 briefcase. He glanced at the courier label in the trash pocket. "This came today," he said. "Signature." "Savannah signed," Lucas said. Alvarez looked at the porch camera and nodded at the angle. "Good. We will take the video. Ms. Cole." "Mr. Cole," he said, shifting to formal. "We will need to search the casita and your husband's office. We have a warrant for records related to Summit Vista and any associated accounts. Please stay clear while we work." Daniel took a step forward. "You cannot just barge into my home," he said, voice rising. Alvarez did not turn. "Your office is covered by the warrant," he said. "The casita is registered as guest space, but currently functions as an annex under your control. We will be respectful. We will also be thorough." Savannah tried again. "Those are personal documents," she said, hand on her chest. "Recipes, private correspondence. Then you will be very relieved when the search turns up nothing you do not want," Scene Alvarez said, and offered a patient smile that did not reach his eyes. 2 more officers arrived. One began an inventory with a numbered sheet and evidence bags. The other asked Daniel to produce identification. He did jaw-tight posture, climbing toward offense. The officer spoke in a calm that sounded practiced. "You are not under arrest at this moment," he said. "You are being detained temporarily while we execute a warrant. For your safety and ours, please remain where directed." Savannah looked to Daniel as if he might conjure a rewrite. He had spent months practicing a story where he controlled the room. Tonight, the room had a script of its own. Alvarez put on gloves and opened the pouch. Inside were passports, 2 in blue, 1 in burgundy. He read the names without inflection: Cole Daniel, Reed Savannah, and an additional document for Ms. Reed from a second nationality. He laid them out for the camera. 2,000 in small bills he added, fanning the cash. 1 USB drive, 1 inventory list. He angled the list toward his body camera. Wine cellar, art, jewelry, office electronics, home safe contents. "May I see that list?" I asked. "Not yet," Alvarez said gently. "You will have a copy with your case number." The messenger bag held contracts. Some were the glossy renderings we had already seen. Others were drafts of management agreements with blank signature lines and my name printed beneath one of them. I felt my face cool. Someone had been bold enough to drop my name into a template and assume the world would accept it. Alvarez passed that page to the inventory officer. Photograph bag tag. He kept reading. Travel itinerary, Santa Fe to Dallas to Madrid. Departure tomorrow. Seats together aisle and window. He set it beside the passports. They were not planning to argue about the view. Savannah shifted from charm to contempt. "You are making a mistake," she said. "This is harassment. We run events. We move materials. You cannot criminalize organization. No, Alvarez said. But I can criminalize fraud, and theft, and the attempt to remove proceeds from the jurisdiction after committing both. He nodded to the other officer. Please step Ms. Reed aside. Savannah's composure thinned. You have no right, she said. But she moved because people move when uniforms ask them to, even if their mouths keep protesting. Daniel tried a softer tone with me, ignoring the officers as if their presence were a temporary weather event. Maggie, this is escalating because you have chosen to weaponize misunderstanding, he said. We can stop this. We can close the door and talk like two people who built a life. I looked at the briefcase they were opening, the one he had carried to weddings and funerals and city meetings. Inside, beneath a legal pad and a pile of receipts, was a velvet jewelry roll. Alvarez unfolded it. My grandmother's brooch looked up at us, red stone catching the courtyard light. Next to it were the pearl earrings Daniel had given me on our 20th anniversary, and a locket I thought I had misplaced last spring. Alvarez logged each piece by description, then covered the roll again. We will return what is yours through evidence control once we have photographed and cataloged, he said to me. For now, it is safer in our custody than in anyone's drawer. I nodded. Lucas touched my elbow, a quiet anchor. Detective Savannah said, gesturing toward the casita. Are you done rifling through my private space? I would like to lock up my belongings. We are not done, Alvarez said. We will be as quick as accuracy allows. He sent an officer inside with a checklist. The man moved through the casita with light hands opening drawers and taking photographs, narrating as he went. Portable scanner in top drawer. Business cards for Horizon Hospitality. Spiral notebook with headings labeled targets and milestones. He paused. A small safe under the bed. He turned to Savannah. Combination. That is mine, she said. Then you will consent to open it, he said, or we will obtain an additional warrant. It is your choice. Consent will be reflected in the record. She hesitated, days of calculation visible on her face. Then she rattled off numbers. The safe door opened with a tired sigh. Inside were 2 thumb drives, a stack of gift cards, and a bundle of letters rubber-banded together. The officer read the top sheet. Projected split after close, he said, then bagged the stack. Alvarez led 2 of the officers into Daniel's office in the main house. I followed only as far as the threshold. The room I had kept organized with lists and baskets had acquired a second order in recent months, the kind made by someone rearranging books to hide the hole in a shelf. Alvarez pulled open the bottom file drawer and slid his hand along the back. His fingers found tape. He peeled an envelope off the metal and laid it on the desk. Inside were copies of documents we had already seen in the envelope Lucas hid under our drawer, but with annotations in Daniel's handwriting. Next to places where my signature was supposed to go, he had written the dates of our birthdays' anniversaries and one Friday in June. Practice dates. I did not know whether to be insulted by the sloppiness or chilled by the schedule. The officer bagged the notes. Alvarez asked the questions that turned paper into conduct. Mr. Cole, did you authorize these transfers? Mr. Cole, who created this company. Mr. Cole, how did this copy of your wife's signature come to be on this document? Daniel refused to answer. His refusal came too fast to be considered. It sounded like advice he had memorized that morning. He clenched his jaw. He looked at me like there was a word I could say to stop the room. I had already used that word when I called Priya. Savannah's voice lifted from the doorway. If you are going to detain me, do it, she said. Otherwise, I would like to pack. Alvarez turned to her and for the first time let his impatience show. You are not the director of this scene, he said. You are a person inside it. You will wait. He stepped outside to speak with the uniform stationed by the gate. Their conversation was low and quick. He returned with paperwork in hand. Mr. Cole, he said, based on the evidence collected and the ongoing investigation into forgery and fraud, we are placing you under arrest for the offense of forgery related to property records and for attempted removal of proceeds of a scheme under investigation. You have the right to remain silent. He read the rest with clean precision. Daniel's face broke into something between anger and disbelief. Elena, he said, then corrected himself. Maggie. Old habits fight last. This is ridiculous. I did not ask for this, I said. You did. Savannah laughed once a sound with no humor. He followed my lead, she said, as if blame were a currency she could spend to save herself. He is the owner. He made the calls. Alvarez looked at her. We will talk about your role downtown, he said. For now, please place your hands behind your back. Her bravado slipped a notch. She complied. They escorted the two men from the hatchback as well. A chain of small decisions had brought all of them to the same blue and red end. The courtyard lights flickered as the wind shifted. A guest opened a door and then closed it quickly, sensing the kind of trouble that asks you to mind your own business. Alvarez kept one officer with us, while the rest moved the arrested to the cars. He turned to me and Lucas. You will get a copy of the inventory, he said. We will ask you both to come in tomorrow to give formal statements. Tonight, lock your office, secure your valuables, and try to rest. That last one is an order I know you will ignore. We will try, I said. He softened a degree. You did everything right, he said. You kept your heads. You called early. You let the process do its job. Will it hold? Lucas asked. He looks like the kind of man who hires a lawyer with a bigger car than our lodge. It will hold, Alvarez said. We do not just have paper. We have timeline. We have behavior. We have intent in a suitcase. Juries understand suitcases. He left with the last of his team. The lights died down to ordinary. The night took a breath it had been withholding. The lodge felt quieter, not empty, just wrung out. Lucas and I stood under the pergola. He rubbed his face with both hands and then let them fall. I do not even know what to feel, he said. You do not have to choose, I said. You are allowed to rotate. He nodded, then looked toward the casita. The door stood open, lamp blazing. The small safe sat on the bed, empty, tilted like a mouth. I went inside and turned off the light. On the dresser lay a single business card I had not noticed before, face down. I flipped it. A name from the firm in Santa Fe. On the back, someone had written a number and one word. Tomorrow. I took the card to the office and put it in a clear sleeve. Evidence has a way of pretending to be trash. I was done with anything pretending. We locked doors. We checked cameras. Lucas made tea in a pot he never uses for anything but bad nights. We sat at the desk and let the steam say what we could not. The recorder uploaded its file to a folder named Simply Now. Near midnight, the wind eased. A coyote called and then thought better of it. Somewhere a guest coughed and rolled over. I rested my palm on the guest book and felt its weight as if it were a living thing. The lodge had been hunted. It had also hunted back in the only way it knew how, by being seen, counted, witnessed. Tomorrow, Lucas said, not as a question. Tomorrow, I said, we go to the station. We go to Priya. We go on with the day. We do not crow. We do not collapse. He smiled into his cup. You are good at directions, he said. I learned from you, I said. You turned panic into a list. He widened his eyes in mock offense. I thought you taught me that. Maybe the lodge did, I said. We turned off the lamp and let the room rest. I slept like someone who had finally put down a load she had carried too far. In the morning there would be statements and paperwork and calls and the terrible quiet after noise. There would also be coffee, a child with a stuffed bear, and a building that needed breakfast. All of it true, all of it ours. Morning arrived like a list. Lucas brewed coffee for the early hikers, while I printed our names on 2 appointment cards, station at 9 Priya at noon. The lodge moved on the same rails it always had. Doors opened, shoes thumped, a kettle sang. I stood at the window long enough to remember why this fight mattered, then picked up my purse and the folder we had labeled statements. At the station, Alvarez met us with a nod and the same unhurried focus that had held the courtyard together. He led us to a plain room with a table and a recorder no bigger than my palm. He explained the process without theater. Give me the spine, he said. Dates, documents, decisions you did not make that have your name. Keep your feelings for the part of you that needs them. Here we need what a judge can hold. I told the story the way Priya had taught me to think a sequence any stranger could follow. The day Daniel filed Summit Vista, the vendor switches, the forged resolution, the itinerary, the suitcase. When I stumbled toward motif or memory, Alvarez lifted a hand and let me catch my breath. When I reached for blame, he asked for a receipt. It was brutal and liberating. Grief shrank to size when fact took the chair. Lucas went next. He spoke cleanly. No flourishes the way he talks when he wants a recipe to be repeated exactly. He described finding the emails confronting Savannah without theater, watching her methods at close range. He admitted the minute he had not told me. He did not apologize for it here. This was not the room for apologies. It was the room for shape. We signed. We initialed where told. Alvarez slid 2 evidence photographs across the table. The jewelry roll, the passports. We will log everything and advise when you can claim what is yours, he said. Mr. Cole and Ms. Reed had their first appearance this morning. Bond will be set. Conditions will include a no-contact order. If you receive a call, end it. Do not give him a chance to say anything that drags you back into the script. He left, then returned with 2 clear bags. The cameo pendant lay against plastic like a small face in a window. The pearl earrings had been photographed, weighed, numbered. These can go home with you, he said. The rest will follow after processing. Keep the receipts. I held the cameo with the reverence I should have given myself sooner. Thank you, I said, and meant it beyond the object. Outside, the sky had the flat brilliance of a dry day. We drove to Priya's office with the windows cracked. Lucas kept checking the rear view as if something could still catch us. Priya had a white board covered in lines that made up a plan. Civil, she said, tapping one column. Criminal runs on Alvarez's clock. Ours runs here. We filed for an emergency order giving you exclusive operational control of the lodge pending dissolution. We are adding claims for conversion and fraudulent transfer. We will seek a constructive trust over any proceeds he moved. Translation: anything he tried to hide becomes a basket with your name on it. We will also file for divorce. I know that word is a mountain. We file anyway. I felt the word roll through me like weather. It did not knock me down. It did make me reach for the chair. Do it, I said. You will also change locks and passwords today, she went on. Choose a locksmith you trust and a vendor to harden your accounts. Lucas set up 2-factor on everything. Maggie make a list of every system that can be weaponized. Reservation portals, utility accounts, vendor logins. Remove him from every lane. Lucas took the list. Done, he said, and already had his phone out. Priya slid 2 printed emails across the desk. Marcelo from Horizon reached out after the news hit the investor grapevine, she said. The words were clean and careful regret at the unexpected legal complications, desire to keep communications open, a gauzy offer to consider partnership later. I have responded with a cease and desist and advise that any further contact be routed through me. You do not owe them courtesy. She pointed to another line on the board. Ortiz says your preliminary review for historic status is on the docket. Not a shield, but a belt and suspenders. We will also get 3 letters from the community on file this week. I wrote them last night, I said. They will sign. Priya's mouth tilted. You are good at this, she said. I am good at my life, I said. He forgot that. Back at the lodge, we split like a practice team. Lucas called the locksmith and our internet provider. I moved through the rooms with a notepad and wrote down every place Daniel's name still lived. I found it in 2 file cabinets, 1 cloud account, a coffee supplier auto delivery, and a corkboard photo from our 20th anniversary. I kept the photo. I revoked the passwords. At 2, Ortiz called. I walked your packet into the office, he said. Flagged it. You will get a site visit request soon. Take someone through the building like you would a guest. Tell them why the floor creaks in room 4 and why that is a reason to save it. Will do, I said. Thank you for treating our place like it was worth the ink. He chuckled. It is Taos, he said. We like things that last. The phone rang again within minutes. An unknown number from the county jail flashed and then disappeared. Another call followed, different number, same source. I put the phone down without answering. Lucas watched my face, ready to intervene. I know, I said. Priya is right. Silence is a strategy. He nodded. We can change the lodge line to a recorded message for a few days, he said. Direct all inquiries to email. Priya can triage. Do it, I said. I was crossing the courtyard when a rental car swung in. 2 people stepped out with the stiff posture of people who think being hurried makes them important. The woman lifted a designer tote. The man carried a folio. He introduced himself as from an events company we had not invited. "We heard there may be new management," he said brightly. "We can assist with transitions." "We have no transition," I said. "We have a lodge. We have guests." He handed me a glossy package. "Just in case," he said. On the way back to the office, I slid his card under the camera and photographed it, then emailed the image to Priya and Ortiz. People had started to circle like the lodge was bleeding. We would make sure every circle saw the red line of the list pendants before they got close. The locksmith arrived at 3:30, a woman with forearms like a sculptor, and a tool bag that had seen every kind of door. She changed the main office lock first, then the casita. "You moving someone out?" she asked. Her tone held the caution of a person who has heard too many sad stories on thresholds. "Yes," I said. "Out of a life they did not own." She nodded like that was more common than anyone admits. "Code this down in your phone," she said, after she finished programming the keypad. "And write it on paper once, then burn the paper." I did. A deputy brought an evidence receipt at 4. He waited politely at the counter while I read it through. The list was long and stung in the way accounting always stings the cold truth of names, values, serial numbers. He handed me another clear bag at the end. The brooch, the locket, my mother's small gold ring that had hung on a ribbon in our bedroom for 20 years and disappeared last spring. "We will return the rest after arraignment," he said. "Keep this copy." "Thank you," I said. It had become a refrain that did not cheapen with repetition. Around 5, my phone lit with a number I knew. Kathy from Phoenix. "I heard pieces," she said. "I am calling to say I love you and that I can fly if you need a body in a chair." "Stay put," I said. "We are past the running part. We are in the balancing part." She exhaled into the line. "He was always restless," she said. "I am sorry his restlessness grew teeth." We filed for historic status, I told her, needing to say something that sounded like future. "They may give us a plaque." Kathy laughed and then sniffed in the same breath. "Put it next to the guest book," she said. "He can have whatever certificate the state issues him." After we hung up, Lucas leaned against the doorframe and studied my face like it was a map. "You okay?" he asked. "No," I said, and found I could say it without breaking. "But I am." We ate leftover stew at the staff table and let our shoulders drop an inch. Savannah's absence was a negative space you could feel. The quiet had a different texture. Our housekeeper said she had found a spiral notebook in the laundry with pages labeled targets and milestones and asked if she should turn it in. "Yes," I said. "Put it in the office safe. We will add it to Priya's stack." At 7, Priya texted. "Arraignment set bond, posted by a bondsman with a Santa Fe address. Both released with orders, no contact, no travel surrender passports. DA filing enhancement for attempt to remove proceeds. Also, investor emails cooling. Horizon said they are on pause. You are buying time. Use it." I took the message out to the courtyard and read it under the string lights we had hung before we knew we would need them for courage. The wind had calmed. The ristras clicked softly language I have always understood, even when I could not translate. Back inside the lodge, phone rang with a persistent patience that usually meant a late reservation. I let it go to the new message Lucas had recorded. A few minutes later, my personal cell buzzed with a text from an unknown number. He used my maiden name like he was trying to rewind me. "Maggie," it read. "We need to talk without lawyers. You are overreacting. You are tired. We can fix this if you put down the stick." I put the phone face down and pictured Alvarez's plain room and the way facts felt inside it. I wrote the number on a pad for Priya and did not answer. Before bed, I walked to the casita with a toolbox and removed the last of Savannah's touches that made the room feel like a stage. The branded candle, the stack of business cards, a framed print of some far beach where she had meant to land. I put them in a box and labeled it with her name for the evidence room. On the dresser under the corner of the mirror, I found one more thing I had missed, a sticky note with 3 letters I knew by now and a time. DCSR9 AM. The handwriting made my skin crawl. I slipped the note into a sleeve. Lucas met me at the office. He had started a spreadsheet, of course, because he is my son. Columns for item origin destination action who took custody. He is building a world that adds up. We closed the safe. We turned off the light. At the door, he stopped. "Mom," he said, not the manager voice, not the crisis voice, just the one he used when he was 5 and wanted to know if thunder would crack the sky. "Yes," I said. "Do you think he loved us while he did this?" he asked. I thought about the envelope taped inside the drawer, and the practice dates, and the suitcase with the passport and the jewelry roll that included my life. I thought about the way Daniel had steadied a ladder for me without being asked, and the way he had not asked for permission to disappear me from a title. I did not have a clean answer. "I think he loved a story where he did not have to lose," I said. And when that story needed a villain, he picked the person who most believed he was good. Love that needs a villain is not love. It is fear. Lucas nodded like it hurt and like it helped. We turned the key. The lodge exhaled. Tomorrow there would be a hearing on something small that would feel large. There would be emails to answer and a preservation board to charm and guests to feed. There might be a call from a reporter and we would not take it. There might be a text from Daniel and we would forward it to Priya. And there would be this building, which did not know how to lie, which only knew how to open its doors in the morning and hold what we gave it. I went to bed thinking not of courtrooms, but of the sign I wanted to hang when this part was done. Not grand. A small piece of wood on the reception shelf, hand-painted in the same blue as our old wedding bowl. Still ours. The first thing I noticed was how quiet the courtyard sounded without the idea of departure inside it. No suitcases by the gate, no courier, just wristras clicking, and the low thrum of the fridge behind reception. Justice is not a noise, AE. It is the absence of certain noises. By mid-morning, Alvarez texted 2 words that reshaped the air. Charges filed. The DA had picked forgery, attempted fraudulent transfer, and account related to removal of proceeds. Conditions stayed: no contact, surrender of passports, travel restricted to the county. Priya followed with our side of the ledger. Emergency motion granted. I had exclusive operational control of the lodge while the dissolution moved. Summit Vista was under a constructive trust. It meant if a dollar touched the wrong basket, the law would lift it and set it back in mine. I printed the orders and slid them into the front desk drawer. Paper did not heal, but it braced. Around noon, the preservation office called. "Site visit this afternoon if you will have us," Ortiz said. 3 o'clock. We come humble with clipboards. "Come hungry," I said. "We will feed you cobbler." He brought 2 colleagues and a woman with a camera bag whose handshake was steady. "Hannah Boyd," she said. Consulting historian. She did not lead with her degrees. She asked where the lodge creaked in the winter and which wall fought the sun in July. I showed her the scar along the hall where a delivery once kissed plaster and how Daniel patched it long ago with mud the color of our kitchen table. She nodded like memory counted as a building material. Lucas walked with us answering questions that had nothing to do with drama. He pointed out the old beam in room 4 with the carpenter's mark still visible and the original tile along the fireplace hearth where a previous owner cut corners and had to fix them. Hannah listened the way people listen when they are building an argument for saving things. "You have integrity," she said finally to the lodge itself, as if it were a person. "You have continuity. You have use. That is the Holy Trinity." When we reached the courtyard, I saw the smallest thing, a child's drawing tacked to the bulletin board, a lopsided house with purple smoke and a sun with eyelashes. We had not placed it. A guest's child had. Hannah saw it too, smiled and took a photo. "Public narrative," she said. "It matters when boards vote." We fed them and sent them off with copies under Ortiz's arm and the lodge's smell on their jackets. Hannah lingered at the gate to ask Lucas about the old territorial trim. He answered in that unshowy way he has when he is certain. They exchanged emails with the practicality of people who intend to do work, not flirt. When she left, Lucas watched the road, then shook his head at himself and laughed once. "Do not start a story," he said out loud, warning the part of him that still wanted clean lines. "Start with a sentence." The phone started their other kind of ringing after that. Vendors wanting to confirm the pause. A local paper asking for comment. Priya texted a script that fit in 2 sentences. "We are cooperating fully with the investigation. We are focused on serving our guests and preserving a historic property. I said it exactly once on the lodge line, then let Lucas change the message so no one else would have to. At 2:30, a deputy arrived with another evidence bag and a clipboard. The velvet roll came home. The inventory listed my mother's ring, the brooch, the pearls, and a watch I had not realized was missing until I saw it. I signed where he told me. He offered quiet congratulations, the way people do when they do not know if celebration is appropriate. "This is heavy," he said, and was gone. At 3:15, Priya called with a stride in her voice. "Horizon emailed me," she said. "A formal withdrawal. They will not pursue the property under current conditions. That means they smelled liability. Marcelo added a personal line I will forward for your file. He says he was unaware of the forgery and wishes you well as you move through a complex moment." "Do we believe him?" I asked. "I do not waste belief on emails," she said. "I keep copies. We will keep this one. It reads like an affidavit he will not want to sign later." The hearing for a preliminary injunction on transfers was set for the next morning. Priya would argue. I would sit and look like a woman who knew her own house. "Do not react," she said. "Let me carry the voice." We ended the call as a rental sedan rolled up. Daniel stepped out in the suit he wore when a guest's wedding needed a host, the tie slightly off the collar too tight. He had no right to be here under the order. Lucas and I exchanged a look. I wanted to meet him with the paper in my hand like a shield. Priya's text flashed before I could move, "Do not engage." "Call Alvarez." Lucas dialed. "We have a violation," he said. "He is on our property." Daniel walked in with his palms open, a posture he had used for 40 years to announce he was the solution. "I am here to talk," he said, aiming for soft. "No lawyers, no detectives, just Maggie and me and a table we built." "I am serving lemonade," I said, because there were guests in the lobby who did not need to see the geometry of our end. "You cannot keep me from what I own," he said, and in that sentence stripped his performance. In the corner, the bear child's mother looked up. I smiled at her like summers are made of this. Alvarez came through the door faster than I thought a calm man could move. He did not raise his voice. He raised a paper. "No contact means no contact," he said. "You are violating a court order. You will leave now." Daniel turned to me as if I might arbitrate a rule written by someone who did not know our story. "Maggie," he said, my name used like a lever. "You once promised I promised to tell the truth," I said. He opened his mouth to argue, then looked past me at Lucas at the guests at the building. For a second, the man I married showed his face not to ask forgiveness, but to understand consequence. He nodded brittle and backed toward the door. Alvarez walked him to the car without touching him. When the door closed, the room breathed again. A guest came to the desk to ask about reservations for next spring. I took her deposit and smiled. "You can perform steadiness until the bones remember." That night, I took the brooch from its bag and pinned it to the inside of my cardigan like a secret spine. Lucas added 2 more lines to his spreadsheet and set an alarm for court. We ate sandwiches in the office because making a meal felt too ambitious and too ceremonial at once. I slept not deeply, but without the edge that had scraped me raw for weeks. Morning put us in a courtroom built for 2 kinds of days, divorces and fresh starts. Priya sat with a legal pad and a look that balanced grace and sharpened steel. The other side's attorney arrived with a briefcase that told me what he charged without telling me who he was. Daniel sat 1 chair behind him. Savannah did not appear. A separate docket would hear her. The judge read the file like a man who had seen every version of this and still believed in paperwork. He asked Priya for the spine. She gave it without ornament. The lis pendens, the restraining order, the constructive trust, the evidence from the search, the attempted wire, the passports. Priya spoke of my signature like an object the court already recognized. "It is not hers," she said. "It is an imitation placed where consent could not be obtained." Opposing counsel tried to paint urgency as misunderstanding. He suggested Daniel had been exploring options appropriate for a maturing business. He used words like streamline and optimize. He used my name like punctuation. "Do you have a consent from Ms. Cole?" the judge asked. "Not at this time," the man said. Do you have a legitimate business purpose for moving assets to an entity that eliminates her control while using her forged signature? The judge asked, voice level. The lawyer coughed and reshaped his mouth. We dispute the forgery characterization, he said weakly, then saw the exhibit numbers on Priya's pad and changed tack. This is a marital dispute bleeding into business operations. It is a business theft covered in marital dust, Priya said quietly. The judge granted the preliminary injunction as if it were inevitable. He extended the no-contact order. He set a review date on historic status, not because it was his jurisdiction, but because he wanted the timeline visible. He reminded both sides that the court is a place for the slow truth. Then he leaned forward and looked at Daniel with the kind of tired kindness I have seen on the faces of men who fix broken things for a living. Mr. Cole, he said, it appears your wife has held your house in place for a long time. Let the law hold you now. When the gavel fell, it sounded less like thunder and more like a nail seated properly. Outside the courtroom, Daniel tried to speak to Lucas. A bailiff stepped between them before a word landed. Orders are orders, the man said, and guided Daniel away by his presence alone. I watched the back of the suit I had dry cleaned for years and felt a grief that did not ask for rescue. Priya squeezed my arm. You did well, she said. Now you go back and do the next small thing right. Back at the lodge, Ortiz emailed preliminary review went favorably. Formal hearing set for the following month. He attached a one-page summary that used words I wanted to hang on a wall: integrity, significance, community value. Hannah sent a note thanking Lucas for showing her the beam. At the bottom, she added one sentence that made me breathe easier than any order. Your place feels like itself. We served cobbler that evening because I had promised, and because people need sweetness after salt. A guest asked if the wind would pick up overnight. I said maybe, and handed her an extra blanket. Before I locked the office, I took out the blue wedding bowl and set it back by the stove where we had kept it for decades. It did not belong on a high shelf. It belonged where heat lives. I ran a finger along its rim and felt a hairline chip we had made in our 23rd year. We had kept it anyway. That is what you do with the things that are still yours. Lucas stood in the doorway watching me return the bowl to its place. He did not speak. He did not have to. We had learned the discipline of quiet. The lodge hummed low. The night did not threaten. Justice had not sung. It had simply held. Tomorrow would carry its own list. Tonight my house sat where it was supposed to, and I stood inside it. By winter the courtyard had learned our new rhythm. Guests rolled their bags over the flagstones without glancing toward the casita. The register filled in a different hand. The staff table grew louder again, the way rooms do once fear stopped stealing chairs. We worked. Paper moved. The lodge kept its promises. The criminal case moved on its own clock. Alvarez called when there was something worth saying and never filled the spaces between with comfort. Daniel entered a plea to the forgery and the attempted transfer count. Savannah took her deal without ceremony. The two men from the hatchback pleaded to lesser charges and disappeared into the system like stones in a river. I did not attend every hearing. I chose the ones where a sentence would be pronounced and sat in the second row with a sweater over my knees and my hands quiet. When the judge read the terms, there was no gavel with sparks, just a plain voice naming months and restrictions and restitution. Justice, I learned, is not a crescendo. It is a ledger made legible. On the civil side, Priya built fences faster than anyone thought possible. The constructive trust caught what tried to slither through. The preliminary injunction matured into orders that could survive appeal. When opposing counsel attempted a hostage swap disguised as a settlement, Priya slid the paper back across the table with a sentence I will borrow for the rest of my life. We do not trade stolen for stolen. The divorce decree came in spring. It awarded me the lodge, the accounts that still had breath in them, and the quiet I needed. Lucas signed nowhere. He belonged to himself. Ortiz set a date. We walked into the county hearing room with a portfolio that looked like a family album and smelled faintly of dust. Hannah sat at the end of the dais and asked the only questions that mattered. Who has held this place, and how does it hold the town? Lucas answered about beams and bones. I spoke about the way our guests bring their small griefs and set them down on the porch for an hour. A neighbor stood and told a story about her father proposing under our strings of lights. A former guest wrote a letter from Chicago about a winter morning when the tea was hot enough to make time gentle. When the board voted to recommend designation, there was no confetti. Someone simply nodded and said, "Good. Sometimes good is enough." We posted the notice on the bulletin board and went back to changing sheets. That same afternoon, a glossy magazine sent a photographer with a list of shots and a schedule that did not understand wind. I made coffee. Lucas showed them the room with the beam he loved. They took the pictures they wanted, and then Hannah asked if she could make one of us standing by the stove with the old wedding bowl in a place of honor. I said yes. The bowl looked like a planet we had decided not to surrender. Daniel wrote from the facility twice. The first letter was the kind you could have predicted explanation disguised as apology, memories deployed like leverage. I put it in the file for the court. The second arrived months later, shorter. He did not ask for anything. He said he had started to sleep only when he stopped arguing with the facts. He wrote one line that counted, "You did what I would have asked if I had remained the man I told you I was." I did not reply. Forgiveness. I learned is not a conversation. It is a decision about what weight you will carry into the next room. Savannah did not write. She sent a message through a lawyer about property she claimed. Priya sent back a list of items logged as evidence receipts for what was proven mine, and a closing sentence that left no heir. There are women who will spend their lives rehearsing an exit. I will not spend mine being their audience. The day the designation became official, a small envelope arrived with a certificate that looked unimpressed with itself and a brass plaque wrapped in paper. Lucas brought a ladder and a drill. We stood under the lintel while he measured once and then again. He held the plate against the adobe and asked where I wanted it. "Not where cameras will see first," I said. "Where we will see when we lock up." He screwed it into the wall beside the office door. The words were simple, historic property. Use, integrity, significance. I traced the letters with my finger and felt something in me unclench. Hannah visited again in a personal capacity. She wore a jacket that looked like it had seen better meetings. We walked the property, and she asked about the plants we kept and the ones we learned to let go. Lucas met us by the herb bed with dirt on his hands and a smile he barely remembered he could make. They talked about window profiles and storm doors and how to lime wash without losing breath. After she left, he stood by the gate longer than necessary, then caught me watching and shook his head. "A sentence," he said, "not a story. He is learning to distrust quick arcs." I trust that. The lodge drew a different kind of traveler after the case made a quiet ripple through town. People came because they had read a paragraph in a paper or because an aunt had told a cousin. They were gentle in the way strangers can be when they understand a room better than its history. They asked for maps and for silence, and sometimes for nothing but a chair facing the courtyard. When they asked, I told the story in 3 sentences. We built this. Someone tried to take it. We used law and patience instead of rage. Then I asked where they had driven from and whether they wanted more tea. Some nights a reporter would email. Priya advised what to say. I used her words. We are grateful for the community and the court. We are focused on the lodge. Other nights I would find myself at the staff table with the cameo pendant around my neck and my grandmother's brooch catching light from the overhead bulb, and realize the past I most wanted had been edited down to objects that could be worn without regret. Lucas started a side project that looked suspiciously like joy. He organized our archives, old receipts, Polaroids, menus we scrawled when we could not afford printing. He scanned everything, labeled the folders, and built a little exhibit on the wall outside reception. Guests stop and point now. They see a picture of me with paint on my cheek, and Daniel 20 years younger, holding a plank like a promise, and Lucas at 5, squinting into the sun. They take a breath, then they go find their room. On the morning the DA's office sent the final restitution check, I did not cry. I made payroll. I balanced the books. I put a small amount into an account I named Renewal, and a larger amount into replacing the roof over room 6, because justice does not fix leaks. After dinner service, I went to the workshop and sanded a scrap of cedar. I painted 3 words on it with the same blue I used on the bowl and let it dry overnight on the sill. In the morning, I set the sign on the shelf by the register where keys hang and people forget scarves and Lucas leaves gum he will never chew. The sign was not grand. It did not demand notice. It simply waited like a true thing waits. Still hours. People ask how you know you have healed. You do not. Not like a server pings. Healing is less a finish line than a way of standing while you do the dishes. Some days I pass under the plaque and feel how close we came to losing a house. Other days I pour coffee and taste only coffee. Once in a while I remember Daniel steadying a ladder or making a joke that made me drop a spoon. I let the memory sit and then I let it leave. Fear builds rooms you cannot live in. So does nostalgia. The lodge taught me to keep the doors that matter and lock the ones that do not. A letter came from the city about signage. They want to include us on a walking tour of buildings that have not lied about their age. I filled out the form and wrote 2 sentences for the guide. We are not larger than life. We are life held at a human scale. It felt right. On a late spring afternoon, Hannah returned with 2 students and a clipboard. They measured window casings and asked Lucas about maintenance schedules. I watched from the office as he showed them the trick to opening room 4's sash without scaring the wood and how to hear when a hinge is asking for oil. He looked like a man in his right work. When they left, he came to my desk and leaned on his elbows the way he did when he was 10. "You think Dad would have liked the plaque?" he asked. "He would have tried to move it higher," I said, and we both laughed because it sounded exactly like him and exactly like the joke we needed. Evenings end the way they always did before we learned new words for endings. I count keys, turn the lock, and glance at the little blue sign on the shelf. Sometimes a guest notices and asks about it. I tell them it is a reminder, not an announcement. We learned the difference the hard way. Tonight, before I shut off the lights, I pull the guest book from the drawer and add a line in the back where nobody reads unless they are looking for permission. Thank you for trusting us. Thank you for letting this place do what it was built to do. Then I close the book and lay my palm on the cover. The quiet holds. The lodge holds. I hold. In the dark between the lobby and the kitchen, the bowl shines a little, catching what light remains. Outside, the ristras stir without asking the wind for permission. I breathe in and out. Tomorrow we will wake up and do the day. The weight is different now, distributed in a way that does not threaten the bones. Still hours, I think not as a boast, but as a practice. And then I go to bed. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the playlist now showing on screen.